Jake slowly opened his eyes. Everything felt strange. The lights above him were soft blue, and the air had a strange scent like fresh metal and sweet flowers. His head hurt a little. He blinked again and tried to move. He was lying on a soft surface, but it wasn't his bed. It wasn't even his ship. The ceiling above him had strange curves, and the walls glowed faintly with shifting colors. His body was bare. No clothes, not even his emergency cryolayer. He sat up quickly, his heart pounding. Where was he? The last thing he remembered was the escape pod launching from his broken ship. It had taken heavy damage in the asteroid field. The engines failed, and the pod auto-launched him to save his life. Jake looked around. The room had no sharp corners, just smooth edges and floating lights. Suddenly, a panel in the wall opened with a soft hiss. 4 tall beings stepped in. They had blue and silver skin, long limbs, and golden eyes. Each one wore armor that shimmered like water, but one of them stood out. She didn't wear a helmet. Her long silver hair fell past her shoulders, and a golden band circled her forehead. Her eyes locked onto Jake's. She didn't speak right away, just looked at him, tilting her head like she was studying something important. Jake quickly grabbed a nearby blanket and wrapped it around himself. Hi. I don't suppose you speak English? The tall woman raised her hand, and her wrist device glowed. A second later, a voice came from the device. It was robotic but clear. You are awake, human, do not fear. This is the royal vessel Sunvale. I am Princess Alari. Jake blinked. Princess. What? Alari stepped closer, ignoring her guard's tension. You were found unconscious. Our pod crashed into our sector. We brought you aboard and placed you in recovery. Thanks, Jake said, still holding the blanket tightly, but... Why am I not wearing anything? Alari looked at him calmly. Your body was damaged by cryo leak. Our healers removed harmful clothing and treated you in Purity Pod. It is our way. Jake groaned softly. Great. First contact with aliens, and I'm the naked guy. The translator device clicked again. Alari didn't laugh, but her golden eyes softened as if amused. You are the first human I have ever seen. But you arrived in a sacred way. The ancient stories say the Bear One comes in times of great change. Wait, what? Jake said. That's just an accident. I didn't mean to come here. I was just trying not to die. Alari looked to her guards. He will stay near me. He may not understand yet, but his arrival has meaning. Before Jake could protest, 2 of the guards approached him with folded clothes. They bowed slightly and handed them over. He took them and stepped into a side room to change. The outfit was soft and light, made of some smooth alien fabric. When he stepped back out, the guards moved aside, and Alari walked ahead, expecting him to follow. Where are we going? Jake asked. You must eat. Then I will explain more, she said. He followed her through curved hallways lit with floating lights. The other crew members they passed stopped to bow or whisper. Some gave Jake curious glances. A few even looked afraid. They entered a room with a large round table. Different types of food were placed in soft glowing bowls. Jake hesitated, but Alari picked a small fruit-like item and offered it to him. It is safe. We tested your biology before you woke up. He bit into it. It was sweet and juicy, like a mix of peach and melon. Okay, not bad. They sat together. Jake expected her to question him, ask about Earth, humans, or his mission, but she didn't. Instead, she just studied his face like he was something rare. Why are you looking at me like that? Jake finally asked. You came during a time of trouble, Alari said. Systems across the ship have started to fail without cause. The healers say our future is clouded. Then you appeared bare and breathing. I think that's just luck, Jake replied. But I'll help however I can. She smiled softly. Then you will stay by my side. Wait, what? The Bear One in our history always stood beside the future queen? It is written, so I will keep you close until your purpose is clear. Jake leaned back. This is a lot to take. I'm not a warrior or a prince. I'm just an engineer. Alari stood and walked around the table. She stopped beside him and placed her hand on his shoulder. It was a simple touch, but somehow respectful. Sometimes the stars choose not the strongest, but the willing. Jake looked at her, then at the strange ship, and finally at his hands. He didn't know why, but something inside him said this was just the beginning, and Alari. She never left his side again, not from that moment forward. Jake sat quietly inside the circular control room. The walls glowed with soft lights, and strange symbols floated in the air like holograms. Everything was so different from human ships, smooth, quiet, almost alive. Princess Alari stood next. To him, she didn't speak much, but she never left. Her presence was calm but strong, like a quiet storm, always nearby. Jake still didn't fully understand why she stayed close to him, but something told him it wasn't just about some ancient tale. One of the guards entered and bowed. Princess, the outer sensor network is failing again. Control systems unresponsive. Alari nodded. Show us. She glanced at Jake. Come, I want you to see this. He followed her into the main sensor chamber. Strange, flower-like machines lined the room. Some of their petals made of crystal were dull instead of bright. They're shutting down one by one, the technician said. No known virus, no traceable source. Jake stepped forward. May I take a closer look? Alari gave a quick nod. The guards didn't like it, but they didn't stop him. Jake knelt next to one of the sensors and pulled out his portable scanner from the small pack they had given him. Your people let you carry tools, even after waking up here? Alari asked. I built this one myself. Always kept it on my even in the escape pod. Jake smiled. Guess it was a good idea. He scanned the sensor. Lines of alien code flashed on the screen. It didn't match human systems, but after a few minutes, Jake found a pattern. The sensors weren't broken. They were being overloaded. With data, they couldn't process. It's like trying to fit a river into a small pipe. Your system isn't failing. It's drowning in false signals, he said. Someone's jamming your network with fake information. Larry's eyes narrowed. Sabotage? Maybe. Or a test, Jake replied. But if you let me reroute the signal paths, I can stop the overload. Alari stepped aside. Do what you must. Jake got to work. He tapped into a panel, connected his scanner, and used simple commands to block and clear the bad data flow. After about 30 minutes, the dim crystals slowly began to glow again. The technician stared at the lights. They are stable again. You fixed what our engineers could not, Alari said softly. I just looked at the problem from a different angle, Jake said, standing up and wiping his forehead. Sometimes, old tricks work on new machines. Alari looked at her guards. Record this. The human helped us. He is not a danger. He is an asset. The guards gave small nods. Her eyes still held caution, but now there was something else. Dash respect back. In the private dining area, Alari placed 2 plates on the table herself, not letting the servants do it. Jake sat, still not used to being served by a princess. I want to understand you, she said. You're kind, your mind. Why do you help us when you have no reason? Jake took a bite of a soft bread-like dish. Because you saved me. Because I'm not the kind of man who just watches when something breaks, Alari leaned forward. In my people's culture, actions speak louder than words. You speak loudly, Jake laughed. I guess that's a good thing. She gave a soft smile. A very good thing. They talked for a while. Jake told her stories of Earths of rainstorms, mountains, music, and machines. She listened with wide eyes, as if trying to picture everything. When he mentioned animals, she seemed fascinated by the idea of birds and trees. Later that night, Jake walked alone in one of the quiet corridors. It curved upward like a shell, lit by glowing lines that pulsed like gentle waves. He needed a moment to breathe and think. His life had changed so fast. He was no longer lost. He was part of something layer. I found him standing near one of the windows, staring at a distant starfield. You are alone, she said, her voice soft. Just thinking, Jake replied, trying to make sense of it all. Alari stepped beside him. In my culture, when one walks the star path alone, it means they carry many thoughts. I will walk it with you. They stood together in silence, the stars beyond the window slowly turning. Do you really believe I'm part of some legend? Jake asked. Finally, Lair. I didn't answer at first. I believe the stars bring people for reasons we don't understand. Legend or not, you came when we needed you. That is enough. What if I mess up? Then you learn. And if you fall, I will help you stand. Jake turned toward her. She wasn't just a ruler or a leader. She was someone who believed in people. In him, and that felt strange but good. Thank you, he said. She nodded. You're welcome, Bear One. He smiled at the nickname. Maybe it would stick. As they walked back to the sleeping quarters, Alari stayed close not as a watcher, but as a companion, and though Jake still had questions, one thing was now clear. This alien ship no longer felt like a prison. It was becoming something else. A few days had passed since Jake fixed the sensor system. The crew had started treating him differently now. They still watched him with curious eyes, but there was no fear anymore. Nodded as he passed. One of the healers even handed him a small fruit without being asked. Princess Alari stayed close, just like before. She often brought him to meetings, ship inspections, and sometimes quiet gardens hidden inside the ship. Though she spoke little in public, in private, she asked many questions about Earth, his past, and even his childhood. Jake had started enjoying those talks. He no longer felt like a guest. He felt included. One morning, the lights in his room shifted to a soft golden glow. It was different from the usual blue. A soft chime played, and then Alari's voice came through the speaker. Please come to the ceremony hall. It is time. He got dressed quickly, wearing the formal robes given to him, soft silver fabric with blue patterns that shimmered when he moved. When he entered the wide hall, he stopped. Hundreds of aliens stood in a circle, all silent. In the center stood Alari, wearing a flowing gown with a star-shaped jewel on her chest. Her silver hair was braided, and her eyes shone like polished amber. What is this? Jake whispered to one of the guards nearby. The bonding? The guard answered simply, Bonding? Like wedding? Garter? The guard didn't reply. Instead, he gently pushed Jake forward. The circle opened, letting him step into the center. Lar walked toward him and held out her hand. Jake of Earth, step into clarity. He hesitated but took her hand. Her touch was soft, warm, and calm. You do not yet understand this moment, Alari said, but this is the tradition of our people, a ceremony of trust and unity. Jake leaned in. Are you saying this is some kind of engagement? Call it pathbinding, she said. Not a promise of love, but of walking together into the unknown. It is a rare bond, done only in times of great need. Jake swallowed hard. And you chose me? Alari nodded slowly. You came when we were lost. You brought answers when we had none. You stood beside me, not as a subject, but as an equal. Jake looked around. All eyes were on him. Part of him wanted to run, but another part felt something else, like he was standing at the edge of a new beginning. Do I have to say anything? He asked. Just place your hand on mine and accept, Alari said. With a breath, Jake placed his hand over hers. The jewel on her chest lit up. So did the ring of energy around them. A gentle hum filled the room, and lines of light floated between their hands. The bond is sealed. The elder spoke from behind them. They walked the same path. After the ceremony, Alari led him to a quiet chamber with cushions and plants that glowed faintly. You look confused, she said. A little, Jake admitted. I thought we were just working together. Now we're bonded. Alari sat across from him. Yes and no. This bond is not forced. It is shared. You may walk away if your heart tells you, and if I stay, then you will always have a place beside me, in council, in battle, and beyond. Jake leaned back. That's a lot for a guy who was just trying to survive. Alari smiled. Yet you do more than survive. You bring change. Just then the door opened. A healer entered with urgent news. Princess, there is trouble in the lower energy core. If it spreads, It could damage flight systems. Alari stood at once. Show us. Jake followed her through winding halls to the energy chamber. Red lights blinked along the walls, and crew members ran in and out with tools. A control panel sparked violently. Jake rushed forward, sliding under it. The converter's overheating. The coolant lines are blocked, he shouted. Eller, I didn't hesitate. She knelt beside him and held the light while he worked. We need to bypass this before it melts, Jake said, his hands moving fast, with her help and the crew's support. They cleared the lines and rewired the converters. Slowly, the lights turned blue again. Everyone in the room clapped softly, with open hands. A sign of high respect in their culture. Jake stood, sweaty and tired, but smiling. That was close. Alari looked at him with deep pride. You did not walk away. You stood and fixed what others feared. I guess I'm getting used to this place, he said, trying to hide how fast his heart was beating. They walked back to the chamber. The hall was quiet, the hum of the ship steady again. You said this bond isn't about love, Jake said after a moment. It is about choosing, Alari replied. And in time, love may come. Or something stronger. Jake looked at her, had her calm strength, her quiet kindness, her faith in him. I don't know what the stars planned, he said softly, but if they brought me here to meet you, maybe they weren't wrong. Alari didn't say anything. She simply moved closer and sat beside him. And from that night forward, her presence was no longer just tradition, it was comfort. Alarms echoed through the alien ship like deep chimes shaking the walls. Red lights flashed in long patterns, and the calm ship that Jake had grown used to now felt tense, alert, ready for war. Jake rushed into the command center, his heart pounding. The crew moved quickly, their movements smooth but sharp. Alari stood in the center, fully dressed in battle robes. Her eyes locked on the floating display showing several enemy ships nearby. What's happening? Jake asked, stepping beside. Her? A rival fleet, she said. They belong to House Zephyr. They seek to take my title. And this ship, you mean? They want to remove you as princess. They want to claim the throne by force. By law, if I fall in battle, they can challenge the crown openly. Jake clenched his fists. What do we do? Alari didn't look afraid. We defend. This ship is strong. But they know our systems have been weak lately. They think we're easy prey. The display showed 4 smaller warships surrounding them in a loose circle. The enemy fleet hadn't fired yet, but they had powered their weapons. Shields? Jake asked the engineer. At 60%, the engineer replied. Outer core still weak. We've rerouted power to weapons. Jake stepped to the console. I can boost the coolant flow manually to let the weapons stay hotter for longer. But I'll need to go into the inner core tunnel. Alari looked at him sharply. That area is not safe. Radiation levels, I'll take a filter. Suit, Jake interrupted. This is what I'm good at, remember? She stared at him for a second, then gave a short nod. Take 2 guards. And return to me as soon as it's done. Jake ran through the twisting halls with 2 armored guards. They reached the engine control room, and Jake suited up quickly. The suit was tight and the air inside was warm, but he didn't care. Lives were at risk. He crawled into the narrow maintenance shaft, tools strapped to his waist. Small sparks danced around damaged wires, and glowing lines showed heat building up dangerously. Too much pressure, he whispered. If this blows, they won't need to fire at us. Gotta work fast, sealing leaking pipes, adjusting flow paths, and using clamps to lock loose connectors. One of the main stabilizers was bent out of shape, so he used his bare hands and a heavy wrench to hammer it back into place. Meanwhile, outside the ship, the enemy sent a warning. This is Commander Grax of the Zephyr fleet. Surrender the royal vessel. Hand over the princess, and you will be spared. Alari stood on the bridge and answered through the comms. This ship is not yours to claim, and I will not kneel to traitors. As soon as her words ended, the enemy ships opened fire. Laser blasts hit the shields, shaking the vessel. Power flickered for a second, but the crew stayed calm. Return fire, Alari said. Aim for their engines. Disable, not destroy. Down. In the core tunnel, Jake heard the blast vibrations. He tightened the final seal and activated the flow boost. Coolant, flowing stable again. The engineer called out on the comm. Weapon systems now at full strength. "Nice job, human," one of the guards said with respect. Jake pulled off the helmet and smiled. Sweaty but alive, he ran back to the command center just in time to see one of the enemy ships retreat. 2 others were spinning off course there. Engine sparking. Alea stood strong, giving comm commands. "Shield status," she asked. "Holding at 50% damage report. Minor hull breaches sealed. Core stable. No lives lost." Alari turned and saw Jake enter, still breathing hard. "You came back. Told you I would," he said. She stepped toward him, eyes serious. "You risked your life for my ship." "I'm bonded, remember?" he smiled. "Your fight is my fight." For the first time, Alari placed her hand gently over his chest, right where his heart beat fast. "You understand more than most, born in the palace." Before Jake could answer, another alert sounded. "Boarding party," shouted a crew. "'Member they're trying to cut through hull section 7? Alari's eyes narrowed. "Guards, with me. Jake's day behind." "No way," Jake said. "I may not be a fighter, but I can help seal the doors or rig traps." She hesitated, then nodded once. They moved quickly through the corridors. Smoke curled from the wall where enemies had begun cutting. The crew set up defenses, and Jake helped reroute power to force the emergency doors shut. The enemy broke through moments later. Armed with heavy rifles, a short battle broke out. Alari fought with grace and speed, her blade glowing bright with every move. The guards backed her up, while Jake pulled a tool from his belt and overloaded. A panel behind the attackers, a burst of electric shock surged through the wall, stunning to enemy fighters. "Nice trick," Alari said as she threw the last attacker to the ground. The threat was over, but the moment wasn't forgotten. Later in the quiet of the ship's garden chamber, Jake sat beside Alari. The light was soft, the air filled with the scent of glowing vines. "You didn't leave me behind," Jake said. "Because I knew you wouldn't leave me," Alari replied. They sat close, neither saying much, but both feeling if the bond was no longer just a symbol, was real, and tomorrow they would face whatever came together. 2 days had passed since the attack. The enemy fleet had left, defeated and humiliated. The royal ship Sunveil was safe again. Repairs were nearly done. The crew had started smiling more, walking with pride. Even the guards who once watched. Jake, with cold eyes, now nodded in respect when he passed by. Jake should have been happy, but something inside him was heavy in the command room. A message came from a galactic scout ship. They had entered nearby space and detected the human signal that Jake's escape pod had left behind. The scout was neutral and willing to transport any survivor back to human space. "They said they can take me home," Jake said softly, looking at Alari. She stood beside the star map, her face calm but unreadable. "I see. They'll arrive tomorrow." Alari nodded but said nothing more. Jake waited a few seconds, hoping for some kind of reaction, a question, a request, a reason to stay. But Alari didn't speak. She simply turned back to the floating map and began reviewing the ships next. Route. Jake walked out slowly. That evening, he sat alone in one of the empty garden halls. The plants glowed softly, casting moving lights on the floor. His hand touched the leaf of a floating vine, and he thought of Earth. The forests, the air, his family, the sound of music, the feel of sunlight. But then he thought of Alari. Voice, her eyes, the way she always stood beside him. The way she fought without fear, the way she never treated him like he was lesser. He sighed. A soft sound made him turn. "It was Alari. I did not mean to disturb you," she said quietly. "You didn't," Jake replied. She stepped forward, but not too close. Her hands were folded. She looked different, less like a ruler, more like someone trying not to say something. "You're leaving," she said at last. "Maybe," Jake replied. "They're offering a ride, a way back to my people." Alari nodded once. "It is your right. He looked at her. Do you want me to stay? She looked down. I am the princess of this vessel. I cannot ask someone to give up their world. I'm not asking about duty. I'm asking about you. The silence stretched. Jake's heart beat faster. Finally, Alari said, I do not want you to go. But if you stay because I ask, then you may regret it. Regret turns to resentment. Jake walked closer. You think so little of me? No, she whispered. I think so much of you that I would rather watch you leave freely than stay and grow distant. Her words hit him deep. He turned away for a second. You know, when I first woke up on this ship, I thought I was lost. And maybe I was. But now, when I think of home, I don't just see Earth. She looked at him sharply. I see the control room, he said. I see the glowing halls, the crew who learned to trust me. I see you standing beside me every time something went wrong. Alari stepped closer, her voice a whisper now. Then why are you unsure? Because I'm scared, Jake said honestly. Scared that I'll stay and not be enough. Scared that one day you'll need a king or someone greater and I'll just be the human you've saved once. Alari placed her hand on his chest. You are already enough. It's not because of the things you fix, but because of the way you never run. He looked at her. So, if I stay, it's not just because of old legends or bonding ceremonies? No, she said. It's because you chose me, and I chose you. The words settled between them like quiet music. The next morning, Jake stood near the docking bay. The scout ship hovered nearby, ready to leave. The crew saluted him one last time. Some bowed. Others just stood with hands over their hearts. ALAR. I wasn't there. Jake looked at the transport, then at the path behind him, then back again. He took one step forward, and then stopped. He stood still for a long moment, then slowly turned around and walked away from the scout ship. He walked back through the ship's halls, through the rooms he had learned to fix, the paths he had walked beside her, and finally reached the upper deck. ALAR, I stood there, looking out at the stars. He walked up beside her, saying nothing at first. She turned, eyes surprised. You didn't go, she said softly. I already did, he replied. I went all the way home, and it brought me back here. She smiled, just a little. I don't know what the future holds, Jake said, but I know who I want to face it with. Alari didn't speak. She didn't have to. She simply held out her hand, and this time Jake took it without hesitation. The ship's sunveil floated quietly in deep space, but inside, everything was changing. New repairs were complete. Systems were stronger. The crew moved with more confidence. And Jake was no longer just a guest, he was part of them, since choosing to stay. Jake had been working with the engineers daily. He helped upgrade the reactor systems and redesigned emergency backups using human-style failsafes. His mix of human thinking and alien tech had already saved the ship once. Now, the crew trusted his way of doing things even when it looked strange at first. Princess Alari, too, had changed. She still wore her royal robes, still gave commands, but there was a softness to her now. When Jake stood beside her on the command deck, she didn't call him Bear One anymore. She simply called him by name, Jake. Shh, she said one morning, standing at the large star map. We've received a message from a nearby planet. Colony there is under threat. Storms, failing systems, and sickness. Do they need help? Jake asked. Yes. Many nobles refused. They say it's not our duty. Jake looked at her. And what do you say? Alari touched the side of the map. A small blue light blinked over the colony world. I say we go. They may not be part of the crown, but they're people, and we have the power to help. Then, we should leave now, Jake said. Alari smiled. I was hoping you'd say that. The ship changed course, and within hours, the crew prepared for a mission. The medical base stocked supplies. The hangars loaded repair bots and tools. Jake packed his kit with human tech tools that had already proven useful. Before departure, Jake stood at the viewing window alone, watching the stars. Laura walked in, quiet as always. Are you ready for what's next? Probably not, Jake said with a grin. But I'm going anyway. She stepped closer. You've grown much since the day we found you. You mean since the day I fell out of the sky without clothes? He laughed. Alara gave a soft laugh too. Yes, that day. He looked at her seriously now. Do you ever wonder if the bond was just legend? Just a story that pushed us together? She shook her head. No, the bond helped us begin. But what we have now is something we built ourselves. Jake nodded slowly. I believe that. Alarms sounded again, but not a warning this time. Just a signal. They were arriving. The planet below was green but wounded. Storms roared across one side. The colony's buildings looked cracked and weak. Small fires burned in several areas. Jake and Alari led the first landing team. They were greeted by a scared group of colonists, thin beings with pale skin and tired eyes. Please, their leader said. We lost power cycles ago. Crops are dying. Children are sick. Alari stepped forward. We brought medical help, food, and technicians. Show us where it's needed. They gotta work quickly. Jake and a group of engineers repaired the main generator using both alien parts and pieces from Jake's personal tool pack. He worked without rest, hands dirty, face focused. I visited the sick children, placing calming stones on their foreheads, whispering old songs in her language. She stayed until each child smiled. Later, the generator roared to life and lights returned to the buildings. The colonists cheered, and when clean water flowed again, one child ran up to Jake and hugged his leg. He froze, then smiled and knelt to pat the boy's head. It's okay now. You're safe. After a full day of work, Jake and Alari sat on a broken stone wall, watching the twin moons rise over the quiet land. We did it, he said softly. Ayla, I looked at him. Together. You know, back on Earth I fixed machines and old drones. In a corner workshop. No one really noticed me. Now I feel like I'm doing something that matters. You are, Alari said. And not just here. Your presence. Your presence. Your ideas have changed our ship, our crew, and even me. He looked at her, a little surprised. She nodded. You taught me that being strong isn't about bloodlines or tradition. It's about standing up even when no one asks you to. They sat in silence for a while, just listening to the wind. So what happens next? Jake asked. Alari smiled. We go where we're needed, help where we can. And maybe one day, when the time is right, you'll stand beside me as more than a bonded one. Jake raised an eyebrow. More than that? She looked at him gently. If you wish it. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he took her hand in his, the way he had during the ceremony, not as a rule, not as a duty, but by choice. I think I already do. She leaned her head against his shoulder, and for a long moment they just watched the stars, from a broken pod and a quiet princess, to saving worlds and changing hearts. His story had begun in fear and confusion, but now he had found something far stronger than survival. He had found home.